All right, I haven't done a recipe video in a while, so I'm very excited to try this protein Snickers bar recipe. A friend of mine shared it with me and I'm gonna give it a try. So first part was actually soaking the dates in hot water. So they've been soaking overnight. Now she said at least 2 hours, but overnight is best. So I soaked them overnight. I'm going to be putting together my dry ingredients here with my coconut milk in the food processor. So we have 2 cans of coconut milk and we have 1/4 cup of almond flour, 2 scoops of protein. I always go with the higher amount. She said 1 to 2 scoops. I put 2, of course. And sweetener, a tablespoon of your chosen sweetener. I use stevia. So we're gonna put this all in the food processor and hopefully all goes well. All right, so a little bit of technical difficulties. Apparently my food processor does not work. So I do have a nice Ninja blender, so I'm gonna mix this real good. All right, I'm just gonna make sure that there's no clumps or anything. All right, looks good. So I lined my little thing here with parchment paper because I'm going to freeze it and then we'll make the rest. Ooh. All right, I'm going to use the spatula to kind of push down some of the corners here. So with the parchment paper, it's going to make it a lot easier to take it out when it's frozen. So let's stick this in the freezer and see what happens. Okay, so the base is been freezing for a few hours. It should be nice and hardened. So we're going to get rid of the water of the dates. We're going to toss this in with a tablespoon of the sweetener. Again, I'm using stevia. Now I basically just did maybe about a cup of dates. So it's just to kind of cover the caramel layer of the protein bars. So I'm going to toss this in. Again, food processor might work better, but this Ninja blender is pretty awesome, so it should do the trick. All right, it's blending up quite nicely. I'm gonna kind of scrape down the sides. So just to give you an idea, nice paste kind of texture, which is exactly what we want to see. So again, just scraping down the sides. Gonna do one more quick go here. All right, so as you see, it is hardened. We're gonna pour the blended dates and sweetener to create that caramel layer. I'm gonna take this right out. And dates already have a little bit of a sweetness, but it is good to add that stevia. So I'm gonna plop it on, spread it around. So depending on how much of a caramel layer you want, obviously, is how much dates you're gonna be blending up. I think I chose a good amount here. So again, we're just gonna kind of spread it around here. Get a nice little layer. Then we'll toss it back in the freezer for a bit. And then we will create our chocolate layer. All right, let's toss it back in the freezer. Okay, so this was in the freezer for a while. It's hard and I took it out just to soften a little bit because I am gonna cut it into little squares. Choose the bite size that you want. When you want bigger, smaller. I like them a little bit smaller when it comes to treats because then I can just kind of have a little bit here and there, and I don't have to commit to a big piece. I'm also going to be melting the chocolate chips with some coconut oil, which we're going to use to dip in the bars and then put on a cooling rack. I'm putting wax paper on the sheet underneath because the chocolate's probably going to drip. We're going to put it back in the freezer to let it harden. So I put about a teaspoon of coconut oil, a couple handfuls of chocolate chips. So it's starting to melt. I'm just kind of mixing it up a little bit before I put it back in the microwave. Once you kind of put it in the microwave, it does melt a little bit, but as you're stirring it, because the coconut oil is really warm, it's going to help melt the chocolate chips, so just keep stirring it. You don't want to put the chocolate chips and the oil in the microwave for more than 30 seconds at a time, so just do 30 seconds a piece. Give it a mix. You'll notice it's actually melting more as I'm mixing, again, because the oil is warm, so it's actually kind of melting the chocolate chips by itself. All right. So again, you'll see the kind of chocolate chips are still a bit solid, but as you kind of start mixing, it will melt a little more. So it'll continue to melt. This might not be enough chocolate, but I can always make more, so not a big deal. Now I have roasted unsalted peanuts. Now you can chop them up into smaller little pieces, but I'm actually going to do the whole peanuts. I just think that's going to be tasty. Okay, so I don't think this tray is going to work very well. I'm just going to ditch the tray. All right, I'm gonna have these peanuts ready to go so that right when I put the chocolate on, it will stick to the peanuts. It will hold them on because again, it's already solidified because it's cold, which is perfect, but we gotta move fast. So again, you're gonna notice as you mix, it melts the chocolate chips a little. Perfect. So I'm going to put a little fresh topping just to get those chocolate chips to stick. I'm not going to waste any time on this. So I don't know if you've seen some of my other videos, but instead of using normal semi-sweet chocolate chips, you can get stevia chocolate chips to decrease the sugar content, but totally up to you. And then of course the sweeteners that I used today was also stevia. You can use other options if you'd like, but those I prefer the best. It's a plant-based sweetener. It's not chemically like sucralose or aspartame. And yeah, so you can see that some of the chocolate is actually already getting cool and solidifying. I'm gonna put it in the freezer for just a few minutes to harden all the chocolate, and then we will taste it. Okay, it is time to test one of these babies out. So again, I just put it in for a little bit, so it should be already kind of thawed. But again, you wanna take it out of the freezer for a little bit before you try it, before you dig into your treat, because it will be frozen. Oh my goodness. It tastes like a Snickers ice cream bar. This is fantastic. So the first time I did this recipe, I tried a couple of things and I learned a couple of things. So my suggestions and tips is to make sure the cookie tray, you actually have a bit of a thicker cookie tray. That's actually best to line the flour, protein powder, and coconut milk to freeze it first, so it creates thinner bars. The first time I did it in more of like a baking square, and it was a bit too thick. So if you are using baking square, just make sure to only pour a small level of it so they're not too thick, because then the frozen part is a lot more of just the coconut milk, where having it smaller is much better. Also, when you're melting the chocolate, make sure it's fairly liquidy, so when you can actually put it in and dip it and let it drip, and then it actually coats it a lot better, and it's just like a thin coating. And then again, I learned this in my first part of the video, which you'll see is when you're dipping it in the chocolate, make sure to put the peanuts on, or the crushed peanuts, right away, because the bar is already cold and the melted chocolate is going to turn cold and harden very fast, and then the nuts won't stick to it. So make sure that when you're dipping it, you're sprinkling the peanuts or crushed peanuts on right away. But these turned out so much better the second time around. Again, thank you so much to my friend Latifah and Kahal for sharing this recipe, and I'm sharing it with all of you. So enjoy. These are fantastic. And if you know me, I love my chocolate, I love my sweets, so finding a healthy option is so important. But enjoy. Such a great treat. Again, definitely some ways you can make it a little healthier, a little less sugar, things like that. Use sweeteners, stevia chocolate chips instead of regular chocolate chips. And the recipe does call for whole coconut milk, but I actually used a decreased fat. So there was no sugar in it and like half the fat. So it also lowers the calories on these healthy treats. So if you like the video and you want to see more recipes, more videos, subscribe and like below, and stay tuned for more.